Welcome back. All right, so career video today. We're going to talk about Hall of Famer Lanny McDonald. So Lanny McDonald, a number 4 pick in 1973. Good year, that 1973. McDonald's drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he led Toronto through what was actually a pretty strong period of hockey for them. So 73-74, he makes his debut in 70 games, 14 goals, 16 assists, 30 points. So modest beginning for Lanny. In his second season, 74-75, plays 64 games, 17 goals, 27 assists, 44 points. Nice progression there. In the playoffs, 7 games, no points. 75-76, 75 games played, 37 goals, 56 assists, 93 points. So he more than doubles his point total from the year before, and he plays pretty well in the playoffs. 10 games, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. 76-77, again, one of his better seasons. 80 games played, 46 goals, which was 5th in the NHL that year, 44 assists and 90 points, which was 8th in the NHL that year. 9 games in the playoffs, 10 goals, 7 assists, 17 points. He's a second-team All-Star and played in the All-Star game that year. So really strong numbers from McDonald at that point, showing himself to be one of the better forwards in the league. And that continues in 77-78. 74 games, 47 goals, which was 4th. 40 assists and 87 points, which is 10th. In the playoffs, 13 games played, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. And once again, he plays in the All-Star game. 78-79, he ends up playing 79 games that year. 43 goals, which was 6th in the NHL. 42 assists, 85 points. And in the playoffs, 6 games played, 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points. So things are good. Things are good, but we're getting into the era now where, well, the way that things are run in Toronto, it's going to lead to some really rough times in the 80s. So Lanny McDonald finds himself on the outs from Toronto, but not because he was playing better, because Toronto necessarily needed to get rid of Lanny McDonald. Because what happened was the Leafs wanted to trade Sittler. And Sittler said no. And Sittler had a no-move clause. So Punch Imlach comes in, and he's having his power struggle with Sittler. He really didn't like that Sittler was like the most popular guy in town, I guess. And so when he couldn't trade Sittler, because Sittler said no, he trades his best friend, Lanny McDonald, instead. So he trades Lanny McDonald. Leaf fans protested. They understood they weren't doing very well in the trade. Now, before the trade, Lanny's playing well. 35 games, 15 goals, 15 assists, 30 points. It's December 29th that he's traded to the Colorado Rockies. He's traded with Joel Quenneville in exchange for Pat Hickey and Wolf Paymont. So seeing Hickey and Paymont coming back, hey, Toronto fans know that's not Lanny McDonald or Joel Quenneville. Quenneville actually was a pretty good defensive defenseman. So they go to Colorado together, Quenneville and McDonald. Lanny would play 46 games with Colorado, and to his credit, he played quite well. 25 goals, 20 assists, 45 points. And his leadership was important to Colorado, but they were a bad team. Colorado was a bad team. I would not be surprised if Rocky fans in the 80s thought there was just a regular season, because they never saw the playoffs. 80-81, he plays 80 games in Colorado, 35 goals, 46 assists, 81 points. So again, point-per-game player on a pretty rough and bad team. And then in 81-82, well, first off, Harold Ballard openly talked about trying to reacquire Lanny McDonald, which led to the Colorado Rockies saying, you can't talk about a player on another team, that's tampering. And then Ballard apologized. I can't prove that's the only time Ballard ever apologized, but it might be the only time Ballard ever apologized. So 81-82, he played 16 games in Colorado, 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points. He's not reacquired by the Toronto Maple Leafs. In fact, November 25th, he's traded with a 1983 fourth-round pick that became Mikko Mikkola in exchange for Don Lever and Bob McMillan. So, pretty big trade. Lanny was kind of ticked off. Lanny was ticked off only because the way he saw it was that the worst team in the league, the Colorado Rockies, didn't want him. And so that felt kind of insulting. And I get why he'd feel this way. But I don't think it lasted very long after he got to Calgary. Because in Calgary, in 55 games after the trade, 34 goals, 33 assists, 67 points. And then, for the first time since 1979, Lanny McDonald played in the playoffs. 3 games for Calgary. He had 1 assist in those 3 games. And had to feel good being on a team that was in the playoffs. And after the trade, he fit in with the Flames really well. As the 82-83 season shows, this is a career year. 80 games, 66 goals, 32 assists, 98 points. Lanny McDonald is one of the main reasons, looking back through history, that I look at a guy who has a big year and say that could be a career year. Just imagine if he was a free agent after that 66-goal season, what the rate would have been. But 7 playoff games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. He was a second-team All-Star. He won the Masterton Trophy for his dedication to hockey, and he played in the All-Star game. So big year. 83-84, we know he's not going to have another 66-goal season, and he doesn't. 65 games played that year, 33 goals, 33 assists, 66 points. Those are good totals. Absolutely good totals for him. The 66 goals he had over was second in the league in 83. The 33 goals, clearly not top 10 that year. In the playoffs, 11 games played, 6 goals, 7 assists, 13 points, and he played in another All-Star game. So overall, it was a pretty darn solid run for Lanny McDonald. 84-85, he misses about half the season. 43 games, 19 goals, 18 assists, 37 points. He only plays 1 playoff game. So rougher year for Lanny McDonald there. 85-86, 80 games played, 28 goals, 43 assists, 71 points. So the goal scoring has dropped off. The points production is still pretty good. And in the playoffs, Calgary goes to the final. This was the first final for Lanny McDonald. 22 games, 11 goals, 7 assists, 18 points. He was very good during that run for Calgary. Then we get to the 86-87 season, and this is where that drop-off occurs. You can never tell with a veteran player when it's going to happen. They can go out, they can do all the workouts they want, but eventually Father Time is undefeated. 86-87, 58 games played, 14 goals, 12 assists, 26 points. Plays 5 playoff games, no points there. So drops out from the 20-goal region. He would not play more than 60 games in a season after that. 87-88 plays 60 games for Calgary, 10 goals, 13 assists, 23 points. In the playoffs, 9 games played, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points. And for his work with underprivileged children, with his work through Special Olympics, he ends up winning the King Clancy Trophy. He was very well known for not being skimpy with his time. He would give you all the time you needed in order to help with charity work. And so really good guy on and off the ice. I never heard a bad word said about him. I think that's part of the reason why when Toronto traded him, there was such a huge to-do made of that. Now, that is before I was personally following hockey, but seriously, anything you read about that Lanny McDonald trade is going to involve the fact that Leafs fans weren't happy. 88-89, the final season, McDonald would play 51 games, 11 goals, 7 assists, 18 points. So the offense is gone, but that leadership was important. He did wear the C at times with the Calgary Flames. In the playoffs, 14 games played, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. Only 4 points in 14 games. But seeing Lanny McDonald drinking out of the Stanley Cup, that's an iconic image. He fought through it. That was why he came back for the 88-89 season. There was no doubt when he was drinking out of the cup in 1989 that would be the last time that we saw Lanny McDonald on NHL ice, at least as a player. But it wrapped up his career nicely. He ends up playing 1,111 games in the regular season, 500 goals, even, 46th on the all-time list, 506 assists, 1,006 points, which is 92nd on the all-time list for points production. 117 playoff games, 44 goals, 40 assists, 84 points, and as I said, the Stanley Cup. So he honestly had a hard time with both of these trades for obvious reasons. He felt that the trade in 1979, as we're heading into 1980, was done out of spite, which I haven't seen anything to tell me it wasn't. Any books I've ever read regarding the Leafs, regarding just historical stuff, it all says that trade was made out of spite by the Toronto Maple Leafs. They did it to spite themselves, it feels like, because I watched the Leafs in the 80s. They desperately needed a Lanny McDonald type. And it definitely broke the relationship with Sittler, and Sittler wouldn't be around Toronto that much longer after that either. So just baffling and bewildering. But it works out for Lanny in the end because he gets that Stanley Cup in Calgary. So for this video, I'm wearing my, there it is, right here. Stanley Cup Championship, because they used to put them on the shoulder, and then eventually they made them not quite so big and they put them on the front. But anyways, Lanny McDonald, really nice run for him in his career, and made the Hall of Fame in 1992. He did also win gold in 1976 at the Canada Cup, which, as I've said, when they decide on who does or doesn't make the Hall of Fame, it's not just National Hockey League. International makes a difference as well. And so if you do really well in international tournaments, if you have Olympic gold, if you have Canada Cup gold, this kind of thing, that goes into the consideration as well. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.